Podcast 200, A Portrait of Deception, ISBN 978 976 97 Welcome to A Portrait of Deception, ISBN 978 976 97 I am your host, Dr. William Anderson Gittins, a renowned Barbadian author, Doctor of Divinity, licensed cultural practitioner, media arts specialist, photojournalist, and podcaster. As a Doctor of Divinity, I am using my theological lenses as frameworks for interpretation in order to help you, the listener, understand the universe and human experiences. These lenses, which encourage critical thinking about societal issues like A Portrait of Deception, ISBN 978 976 97 have influenced my personal worldviews, ethics, and values. This view is supported by letsgivethanks.blogspot.com. Taking everything into account, according to A Portrait of Deception, it can be challenging to recognize dishonesty due to linguistic and cultural barriers in examining the complex connection between language, culture, and deceit. This thorough examination of deceit is also described as a complex phenomenon that is essential to cultural narratives and human interactions in a variety of societies, historical periods, and even animal species. A case in point, it begins by acknowledging the complexity of deception, which can manifest in numerous forms, driven by motivations such as self-interest, protection, or the desire to benefit others. That said, this exploration emphasizes the importance of understanding the dual nature of deception. This view is supported by www.bitglint.com, not merely as a normal failing, but as a significant aspect of communication and conflict resolution. According to this discussion, different cultural interpretations and strategies make it more difficult to comprehend dishonest behaviors. Even though human deception is visual, it explores the meaning of deception, traces its origins, and highlights how it is portrayed in religious writings, especially the Bible, where lying is frequently denounced as a moral weakness. A fundamental example of deceit is found in the biblical story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, which highlights the moral quandaries and repercussions of transgression. Both the act of deceit and the capacity to recognize it are shaped by the profound and complex cultural effects on deception. Therefore, the significance of comprehending various cultural settings is emphasized by the relevance of culture in deception detection. We use both top-down and bottom-up methods to analyze deception in different contexts. The fundamental cultural underpinnings, such as communication methods, societal conventions, and values related to honesty and civility, are the main emphasis of the bottom-up analysis. This procedure aids in modulating both individual and group behaviors towards dishonesty. The top-down method, on the other hand, looks at well-known theories of deception and investigates how their dynamics and applicability differ depending on the culture. This conversation explores the etymology of the word deceive, showing how it came to be in different languages and emphasizing its biblical meaning. Genetic predispositions, according to www.verywellhealth.com may contribute to both the inclination to deceive and the capacity to recognize it. According to important discussions on the hereditary elements that may impact dishonest behavior, the etymology of the word deceive provides insight into the language and historical development of the idea of dishonesty. The word, which comes from the Old French word deceiver and the Latin word decipere, which means ensnaring or cheating, captures the ingrained connotations of treachery and deceit. The Latin word capere, which means to take, emphasizes the idea of taking away truth or trust, while the prefix "d" adds a negative nuance by implying removal or reversal. By following these beginnings, the research shows how social views of dishonesty are created and changed throughout time, demonstrating the intricate relationship between morality, language, and human action. Therefore, by framing deception as an act of exploiting others, this etymological approach highlights the moral consequence of lying. In addition, this discussion tackles the ethical ramifications of lying, establishing a link between ethical considerations, cultural background, and the evolutionary foundations of human behavior. Identity management, emotional motivations, and the cognitive demands of lying are among the psychological processes that underlie deceit. The idea of deception in the animal kingdom is examined in this conversation, which highlights several species that employ dishonest survival tactics. Caterpillars, leopards, and cuttlefish are a few examples. Leopards can blend into the shadows of forests. According to scienceline.ucsb.edu, while cuttlefish may instantly change color and texture to fit in with their surroundings. This view is supported by Earth.com news how to cuttlefish instantly change their skin color based on what they see and feel. In contrast, insects mimic leaves or twigs to remain motionless and employ stick-like scents to ward off predators. This view is supported by animalresearch.com. The creativity of nature is demonstrated by the insect kingdom's skill at concealment. It highlights the evolutionary significance of deception, suggesting that both the ability to deceive and to recognize deception have developed through natural selection. Throughout this discussion, the conversation underscores the ethical implications of deception, urging readers to reflect on the importance of truth and integrity in interpersonal relationships. In addition to discussing the negative effects of deceit, such as emotions of betrayal and mistrust, it draws on a number of biblical instances of dishonesty, including those involving Jacob, Ahab, and Eve's temptation by the serpent. Many stories in the Bible deal with issues of deceit, especially through the figures of Jacob, Ahab, and Lot's daughters. Jacob's tale has several examples of dishonesty, such as Rachel's trickery of her father, Laban, over family idols, and Jacob's, with Rebekah's help, mimicry of Esau in order to gain his father's approval. Genesis 27, 1-40. Simeon and Levi also commit deception against the Shimonites in punishment for their sister Diana's transgression, and Jacob's son also lied to him about Joseph's destiny. Ahab claims that Jezebel's schemes result in Naboth's erroneous execution so that Ahab might purchase his vineyard, signifying malice concealed behind false pretenses. After fleeing Sodom, Lot's daughters engage in their own kind of deceit, Genesis 19:33 to 35, thinking they must maintain their family's reputation by fooling their father into getting drunk. Proverbs 11:1, Micah 6:11, 2 Samuel 3:25, Revelation 28, Genesis 31:7, Job 15:35, Psalm 72:14, Proverbs 20:17, Jeremiah 9:8, and Mark 7:22 are only a few of the biblical passages that contain multiple warnings against dishonesty. A verse that reinforces its horror by listing dishonesty as one of several types of wrongdoing. Scripture uses the words deceive and deceived a lot, which highlights how thoroughly deceit is explored in biblical writing. Readers and listeners are being urged by this discussion to use biblical principles as a framework for comprehending and thwarting deception in a watchful and knowledgeable manner. It challenges readers to face their own prejudices and look for a deeper comprehension of the complexity surrounding deception in both personal and societal situations by highlighting the importance of discernment, humility, and the research of truth. The text encourages people to use biblical teachings and cultural sensitivity as guiding principles and calls for a diligent approach to comprehending and thwarting deception. It contends that the connection between truth and deceit is not only a moral dilemma, but also a crucial component of interpersonal relationships and cultural standards. This conversation encourages the populace to engage their cognition more. At the end of the day, the text encourages people to use biblical teachings and cultural sensitivity as guiding principles and calls for a diligent approach to comprehending and thwarting deception. This conversation ends with an exhortation to consider the moral ramifications of our choices and the truths we decide to preserve, reaffirming the notion that negotiating the complexity of dishonesty calls for wisdom, humility, and a dedication to integrity. The duality of culture, morals, integrity, teaching, and genetics in ancient biblical cultures was examined in A Portrait of Deception. With Latin and Old French origins, the word deceive can be found in the biblical texts such as Job, Psalms, and James. The book explores if dishonesty may be passed down through the generations and asks whether our capacity for deception and deception detection is as much a part of our identity as our appearance. There are several stories about dishonesty in the Bible. I have studied the biblical foundations of human deception as a renowned Barbados author, Doctor of Divinity, certified cultural practitioner, media arts specialist, photojournalist, and podcaster. Because of the aforementioned, I'm competent to investigate the notion that dishonesty might be inherited, raising the question of whether our ability to be deceitful and recognize it is as much a component of our character as our outward look. However, the Bible has numerous tales about dishonesty. Your participation in podcast 200, A Portrait of Deception, ISBN 978 976 97471 42 is much appreciated. This episode was captured and framed in e-publication 356. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your thoughts would be greatly valued. Till the next time, keep developing, learning, and exploring. God bless.